Hey guys, we are going to start building our travel project. In this video we are going to build the navbar and we are going to simulate the login process of the user. So when the user is logged in, it will appear the icons of the user and the drop menu of the user, and when he is logged out we will just see the login button. Now the user is logged in, so we can see the icons of the user and the avatar. And now let's get started building our project. Let's create a folder. Let's call it place to stay in. And let's navigate to this folder so we can open it in the Visual Code. Let's create two folders. One is a client and the other folder is server. We are going to create our React app in the client folder. So let's change the folder to client and create React app. Now let's start our app. I'm going to delete public and source folder and recreate them from scratch. It is easier. So let's create a new empty folders. Inside the public, the index.html. And the title, place to stay. Let's add the div with the ID root. Now let's create source folder. Inside it, index.js and the app component. Let's start by app. Let's save it, go to the index. We are going to import create root as in the new React 18. They changed the way how to hook into the div with the root ID. And this is the new way to render the app application inside that div. Let's check it is working. Now let's create a folder for our components. Let's create navbar component. We are going to use Material UI. So let's install it. Let's copy this. And paste it in our terminal command. And let's copy the font and add it to our index.html. We need also the icons, so let's install them as well. And let's start building our component navbar. Let's import the app bar component from Material UI. The app bar will fill the document 100%, and let's add inside it container so we can centralize other components inside that app bar. And the toolbar will fill the app bar element. And we added disable gutters to remove the padding from the left and the right. Now let's add the menu icon. Let's import this from the icons. This is the drawer icon. Size is large and color to be inherited to be white. And let's give it a margin from right side 1. Now let's add our logo or the text. Let's call it "You are welcome." And this is for big screens. So let's add some properties. Variant, it will be styled like H6. And the component, because it is important, we will make it H1. No wrap, because we need it to be stick together. And we needed to fill all the gap to push other icons to the right side. So we need to add the flex grow to be 1. And the display, it will be an object. In small icons, XS, we don't need it to be appear. And in the medium and big screens, the display is flex. Let's copy it and paste it for the small screens. We will make the text smaller. And here it will be the opposite. In small screens it will appear, and in medium and big screens it will not appear. Now let's import our component in app component. And let's check our work. It looks nice. And in small screens it works as it's supposed to be. Let's continue building our navbar. Let's add the login button. Color to be inherited. The text is white. And the start icon, we need to add the look icon. Let's check again. Looks nice. Now we need to build our context so we can switch between the logged user and the logged out user, when there is a user and when there is no user. So let's create a folder context. Inside it, context provider, and as well the reducer. Let's start building the context provider. Let's create our initial state that will contain all our public values. One of them is our current user, and the default value is null. Now let's create the context. And pass the initial state. Here we are going to create a hook so we can extract the values of the context easily. We will retain the use context and pass it our context we just created. And here let's add our context provider. Context.provider, and let's extract the children inside that provider and retain them. After we provide them with the value of the context, we need to add the current state and the dispatcher of that state inside this value. So let's go to the reducer. The reducer is a function that receives the state and the action we need to perform on the state. Let's use the switch instruction, and we will test the type inside the action object. And let's add the case when it is update the user. We will retain the same values inside the state. And we will just change the current user to be the payload inside the action object. And in case we misspelled the action or we forget to add it here, we will throw a new error so we can understand that there is no action available and to fix it. Let's export this reducer. Now let's extract the state and the dispatch from use reducer. And we will pass it the reducer that we just created and the initial state to set that state to our state. And now let's pass this state and dispatch as an object inside the value of the provider. Now all the variables inside the state will be available to all the components wrapped by this provider. Let's try to use an image. We will import it, use it as a URL for our avatar. And let's create an object for the user. This is just for testing, it is not the real user, because after that we are going to create our authentication system. But for now we are going to use this object to log in and log out, and depending on the state in the context provider. Let's wrap our app with this provider. Now let's extract the current user inside our state using our hook use value. The current value of the current user, it is null, as we added in the initial state. Now let's check the state of the current user. If there is no current user, that means it is null. We will show our login button. And in case there is a current user, we will show the icons, and after that the drop menu. Here now let's build our icons of the user. Let's go to the components and add a new folder. We will call it user, and inside it let's add the user icons. Let's put them inside a box. Icon button, and inside it a badge. And the icon, let's use the mail. Let's give it a color error to be red as a notification, and the content, let's make it as 5 messages. The size for our icon large, and the color inherited to be white. This will give the color of the icon. Let's copy it and paste it for the other icon. Let's use the notifications icon. And let's change the content to be 20 requests or something. Now let's add our avatar. We will wrap it with tooltip to be open user settings. This will appear when we hover on the avatar. Icon button, and inside it the avatar. Now let's import our current user to get the name and the photo URL. This is inside our state. The source will be current user .photo URL, and we added the question not to trigger an error. Here as well, we added the question mark before the name. And in case there is no photo URL, we will use the first letter of the name. So we will extract it by char at 0 to uppercase. Now let's save it and include it in our navbar. So if there is a current user available, we will show these icons. And using our login button, let's change the state of the user from null to be the object we created. So let's import the dispatch and use it here to dispatch the action of updating the user state inside our reducer. We call it update user, the type, and we will put in the payload our user object. This is our user object. We will send it to the reducer, and the reducer will do the action to update the state by changing the current user to the action.payload we just sent. This is the payload and this is the type. Let's save and now check. Here it is null, it is login, and now when we click on the login, the state of the user changed, and we can see the icons of the user with the URL of that image we imported for the user. Now let's create the user menu. Let's use the component menu in Material UI, and we need to pass a properties of that menu. This is the anchor of the menu, where it should be related to, which element is related this menu to, so it will appear next to that element. We are going to use, of course, the avatar to be the related element. we will pass the anchor L, our anchor user menu. Anchor L means the anchor element or the element this menu is related to, so it will appear next to that element, which is the avatar. And the open property receives a boolean parameter, so we will change our element into a boolean. If there's an element, it will be true, and if it is null, it will be false. On close, this is triggered when you click outside that menu anywhere in the page. We will create a function, we will call it handle closed user menu. And on a click, when you click on any item of that menu, this will trigger as well the same function. Let's add the function here. And we will just set the anchor user menu to be null. That means there's no element related to this menu, and the open will receive a false. Let's add the menu items. The first menu item will be the profile. So let's add inside it an icon. Let's item icon. And inside it the icon, we'll use the settings for the profile. And the font size is a small icon. Beside that icon will appear our text profile. Let's copy it and use it again for the logout. Now let's use the icon logout. And on a click on logout, we will dispatch the same action to update our user, but we will pass the null as payload to change the state of the user to be null. Let's import the dispatch using our hook. And dispatch the action update user. Inside our property type, and the payload we will include now. Let's import it here inside our user icon. And we need to add a state. This state will control this menu if it is open or closed. Anchor user menu. And set anchor user menu. The default value is null. That means it's closed. And when we click on the button of our avatar, we will change this state into our current element, which is the button or the avatar. That means the drop menu will appear next to this button. And let's pass this state into our user menu component. And let's save and check. Let's try the logout. It's working. Well, logged out, and now when we logged in, the icons and the drop menu appear. This is not the real authentication, it is just a simulation. In our next video, we are going to build our authentication system, and we will build our login component in the next video. So see you guys in the next video.